And we have your colleague Mark on. And we just finished up a session. I just hit record so that everybody knows this is recording. And I'm confirming that. Yep, the icon looks like it is recording. Grace is giving me the thumbs up. Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you. It is 9:28. We're going to get started here in a couple minutes. They did put the links on for all these sessions this morning at 9. So we're going to give it a couple minutes before we turn it over to you, Mayanne, and get started with your presentation. Real quick for introductions, I'm Jeff Macon, Fresno State's WET Center, which stands for Water Energy Technology. And I'm going to be helping to moderate this session. Also, I have a couple colleagues on. I'll let them introduce themselves. Grace, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Grace Manley, working at the WET Center, Water Energy Technology Center here with Jeff Macon, and excited to hear the biofilter today.
Thank you, Grace. And Max, please, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. My name is Max Nikashin, client coordinator at the WET Center with Grace and Jeff, and a student at Fresno State as well. And I'm ready for this presentation and excited to learn more about biofiltro.
Max, when do you graduate?
I'm hoping next semester. Going to take some summer classes and expedite the process, but next semester is the goal.
Good deal. All right. Well, 9:29, and Mayanne, I know you've done presentations like this. We have until 9:55 a.m. And Grace and and Max will stay on. We'll keep recording this. Everyone, so you know, this session will be made available on worldagexpo.com all year with the recording in case you or someone else you know might want to see this session. It is 9:29. We'll probably have some people filter on here, Mayanne, over the next few minutes. But I will let you take it from here and let Grace, Max, or I know if we need anything. We'll be looking out for folks and muting and turning off cameras if and when needed. But Mayanne, please.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, WET Center, for having me. I get the fun thing of sharing my screen now, so give me 1 second. All right, let me see. And it's full screen, correct? Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for attending this virtual event. Thank you again, Jeff and WET Center, for having us. The fun fact, the connection is biofiltro actually started, 6 or 5 years ago now at the WET Center. That's where our first offices were in the United States. So yay, WET Center. We can't say enough about them. Oops. Let me figure out. Sorry, your heads are all up in the corner for me. Okay, so I'm here today. My name is Mayanne. I am Vice President of Sales and Marketing for biofiltro. We do have a virtual booth today, so be sure to check us out. We're 6230. And what I'm going to be talking about today is how worms and cows working together can help cool the planet. And to do so, what I want to do is basically just walk through a case study that we have. So what better way than to actually do a little applied learning? And so this is Royal Dairy. They are located in Royal City, Washington, which is central Washington. It's close to like the Yakima Valley. They have about 6,000 milking jerseys, 4,300 of which are freestall and 1,700 of which are on dry lot. So it's a pretty decent sized dairy. And up in Washington, which obviously has colder climates, warmer climates, and you can basically see the Columbia River Gorge behind them in this background. So when we met Royal Dairy, actually, gosh, almost 6 years ago now at the World Ag Expo, so another props and connection to this show, we wanted, what it was is we had to look at their existing manure management system. What did they do previously with their manure management? So they were a very typical dairy in that they do freestall flush barn dairy. The cows come in, they're eating. The lanes, they're pooping and peeing in the lanes, which get flushed. All of that water goes into a series of solid separation entities such as a settling pit, a slope screen, a centrifuge. All of the solids that are separated out in this process are actually composted and reused for bedding back in the barn. And then the liquid manure then flowed out into facultative storage lagoons. And so there the water would sit for a couple of days, couple of weeks, and then it could either be recycled back to flush the lanes up in the barns, or the required land application area was 4,000 acres. And in order to properly dispose of his water across 4,000 acres, the farmer had it either on site and able to be irrigated with center pivot, but a lot of it he actually had to load up into trucks and haul off site. So that was a cost, that was an ongoing liability. And that was just also you're trucking your waste off site, which isn't the best environmental statement for most people. So what were his wastewater pain points when we met him? Like I mentioned it beforehand, is most farmers, you have what is called a nutrient management plan requirements. It defines and or limits how many pounds per acre per day or per year of nitrogen, of phosphorus, of various nutrients, organic nutrients that you can dispose of on the land. And when you can't exceed that level. So he had to stay within those requirements or restrictions. At the same point, the dairy farmer was asking, how can I grow or increase either my herd size or my milk production on my existing property, on my existing land application area? And he also had this ongoing endless cost and liability of the hauling the manure off site. So like I said before, the trucks would show up to those lagoons, suck out water from those lagoons, drive, 10, 20, 30 miles off site, spray it on the land. That is an ongoing cost that never ends. And of course, with labor and everything getting gas getting more expensive, that was only going to continue to increase. And at the same point, this is the owners of this Royal Dairy. It's the Allred family. They're very young. They want to set an example for farmers to come for their own children. They want it to be a sustainable farm operation. And there's also, as much of us know in the dairy industry, there's a call to action as well as a consumer demand for people to become carbon neutral. And so while Austin Allred, the owner of the farm, was looking at how to reduce or comply with his nutrient management requirements or his liquid manure handling, he also thought, is there a way to do this better? So that's where he met us at World Ag Expo, and he brought in essentially the worms. So what we Biofiltro do is that we can either design, build, and operate our own patented wastewater filtration process. And it's an aerobic treatment process that removes 70 to 95% of organics from liquid waste in about 4 hours. And of course, we do it using worms. That's why we're here today, and that's why we have worms everywhere. And so ultimately what happens is wastewater, you're flowing out of a production facility, it's going to go through some sort of solid separation, and then you can see it gets applied across this containment basin or worm bed that you can call it. So we need to build some sort of containment structure. It can be concrete with concrete walls or a slab. It can be steel tanks. We do shipping containers. It could be a liner. We just need to contain these medias. And in the beds, we fill it with a layer of wood chips and wood shavings. We also put in crushed rock. And then we also put in drainage cells, which is just a fancy word for plastic pellets. That's maintaining an air chamber down below that's being passively aerated by these vents up here. And so what's happening is that wastewater is being irrigated intermittently about 2 to 5 minutes every 30 minutes across the system surface. So water takes 4 hours to percolate down through these layers before it flows out here. And as the water flows through the wood chips, that's where the worms and microbes that we've inoculated or seeded the system with get to work. That's where they're eating, that's where they're hungry, and they're digesting the nutrients. And so again, our entire treatment process is 4 hours. And we're just basically ultimately worm farmers, and we're feeding hungry worms with the nutrients from liquid waste. So this is a overhead, essentially, of Royal Dairy. You can see that the sprinkler system is on one bed and the other beds are off. And then this is a flyover, just to give you another visual. The size, dimension, shape of these systems can vary based on topography, how many gallons per day, and how clean the water needs to be. And if you grab a handful of our system, this is what you're going to see. So our system, it has an extremely high density of worms, or our employees. And before people think, okay, they're just dumb worm farmers, or, what's so special about this, is we've figured out how to maximize the density of worms in this bed. And in other words, what we've done is we've maximized the digestive capability of our system. So in the normal, wild situation, if you were to go into your backyard or a fertile land and dig up some dirt, you might find 400 to 600 worms per cubic yard. dirt material, but in our systems, we get up to 12,000 worms per cubic yard of material. So what that means is we have 12,000 hungry little guys eating nonstop 24/7. Worms are actually, they're fun. They can eat double their weight every single day. And then the fun fact is that they live actually 6 to 8 years. So what that means to us is we have great employee retention, but also a highly trained workforce where their sole job is to eat. So how does biofilter fit in with Royal Dairy? So this is an overhead, a render of the farm. What is in navy down here are all pre-existing infrastructure. So what happened beforehand, again, is these are the barns. Water used to be flushed out of the barns, go through, settling pit, solid separators, et cetera. It used to go into these 2 ponds, and where from here it could have gone out to center pivot or be recycled back up to here to the flush lane, to the water towers that would then flush the barns again. But now what we've done is we took this existing pond and we converted it to what we call an equalization pond. It just provides us with temporary storage. Since again, we irrigate 2 to 5 minutes every 30 minutes, we need some sort of upstream retention or storage to kind of enable us to have that break. And from this pond, or the equalization pond that I have here, is that we then send it out to our worm beds or vermifiltration, where 4 hours later, the water is going to come back into what is now called the clean water storage lagoon. And so from here, it can either go to, again, land application, or also be recycled back up. So in terms of adding or upgrading their wastewater system, you can view us kind of as a filter or an extra appendage. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel, completely change how the dairy farmer operated. We just kind of slipped in to their existing process. So this system has been operating, like I said, we met them about 6 years ago in 2015, I want to say. When Austin first met us, he thought we were kind of crazy, worms, like, could this system work in the Washington winter? He didn't, he needed his time and he needed to test us. So what he did actually is he built just this little bed. This was our little pilot for the first year. And that was called phase 1. Essentially, he wanted to put it through a Washington winter. And then after that, he rolled into what he called phase 2, which was treating the equivalent of about 200,000 gallons per day. And that's when he built out this bed, and this bed right here. He ran that for a year or 2. And then just this past year, almost exactly a year ago, he completed what is now treating 750,000 gallons per day. And that's where he added all of these beds here. So in total, like I said, it's treating about 750,000 gallons per day of liquid manure. It is approximately 320,000 square feet of worm beds. That's billions of worms. We haven't done roll call, but the lifetime system efficiency or performance is that we have an average removal efficiency in total suspended solids of 97%. From the liquid waste stream, we remove 91% of the total nitrogen and 92% of the total phosphorus. So what does that mean? By removing the at least 90% of the nutrients from the liquid waste, we can now decrease the required land application, because now the nutrient loading is no longer high. So beforehand, as I talked about, he needed 4,000 acres to properly dispose of his wastewater. Now he only needs 400. So there are multiple options. One is that he eliminated the need for offsite trucking. He can either, stay to those 400 acres, all of which he has on site, and he's able to now irrigate through his existing center pivot irrigation. Or he could also, so he can now sell the excess acreage. He can convert the excess acreage if he wanted to a higher cash value crop, or he can increase his herd size or his milk production essentially within his farm, because he has so much now like space or flexibility essentially in his land application requirements. So that is one of the major pluses in treating the wastewater, is obviously compliance, but giving him now many options of what to do on his existing facility and existing acreage. It's also by treating the wastewater very quickly in 4 hours. We're also reducing the odors and air irritants. So again, when you stored it in a lagoon for 15, 40, 60 days, that's a lot of anaerobic material breaking down and releasing irritation, releasing gases, releasing odors into the air. And so that can bother the animals in the barn, that can bother neighbors if you have them. So by eliminating all of that, you have happy cows, happy neighbors, and happy farmers. But now what I also want to pay attention to is this. We are removing 89% of total volatile suspended solids. And what does that mean is important to how our talk today in terms of carbon neutrality. So in order to talk about the carbon footprint or the carbon neutrality of our system, we have to understand a little bit what is the carbon footprint of manure. And so most US dairies, in fact, most US livestock operations use the process that I explained above or before, where you discharge liquid manure into a pond. And again, those ponds, the water will stay there. There's no aeration. It's just hanging out for days and days and days on end, which mean you have the nutrients, the organic matter decomposing. And as you have decomposition of organic material, it becomes anaerobic, and then the anaerobic generates emissions. And so in this chart, you can see that the manure can contribute up to 50% of the greenhouse gas emission from a dairy operation. But also, this anaerobic release of emissions from your pond is what's contributing, or is the equivalent, in a freestall barn, the anaerobic breakdown of the material in your lagoon is generating the equivalent of 6 to 9 tons of CO2 equivalent per milking cow per year. That's the equivalent of a car, essentially, per year. So every milking cow has the same carbon footprint, carbon impact as the car. So going back to this, when we reduce essentially the organic matter that's going into the liquid, to the pond afterwards by 89%, that means we're preventing 89% of the potential methanes or emissions from forming in the first place. So very simply, how did we measure that? Is we took and measured the emissions of the water, of the wastewater, before it went into our worm bed. And then we measured again the emissions after it came out of our worm bed. So this is an emission study where we saw, for the green is the emissions from water coming into our bed. We did 11 separate readings, and then the orange is the emissions coming out of our bed. So you can see here in methane, we reduced it by 97 to 100%. Carbon dioxide, we reduced it by 60 to 85%. And ammonia, we reduced it by 84 to even 110%, which was pretty awesome. What that ultimately means and what we've extrapolated it to is that our system generates about 8 carbon credits per year if you're milking Holsteins, and about 5.66 carbon credits per year if you're milking Jerseys. What does that actually mean? This is Transformation Tuesday before and after. These are pictures of Royal Dairy's ponds before we installed biofiltro. So this is, again, all of this nutrient decaying matter that is decomposing and releasing emissions of methane into the air. This is the exact same pond now after biofiltro has gone in. And so beforehand, what we did is we had to measure what was the actual impact of this pond. And that's where we saw that this pond beforehand was emitting approximately 42,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent a year. And then afterwards, you can also see the difference, one, visually. And so what that ultimately means is afterwards, we found that we were emitting just about 7,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. But I would like to believe that these pictures speak for themselves, and that one clearly looks like not the greatest solution in the world, and the other one obviously has a very notable impact. Because also, again, this is the water that's going out onto the land, back into the barn, and this is now what the water that's going out to the land and back into the barn looks like. What does that all mean? Dumbify that statement, Mayanne, is that basically Royal Dairy is preventing the formation of 35,000 metric tons of CO2 from forming every single year. Another way to say that is that Royal Dairy generates 35,000 carbon credits per year. And so what does that mean is, one, the dairy is going to be able to produce almost 100 million pounds of low carbon milk per year. They are part of the Dairygold Co-op. Dairygold is one of the many dairy entities that have made a commitment to become carbon neutral. So they are, assisting Dairygold in helping achieve their carbon neutral statement. They themselves are becoming a more sustainable dairy. They're lowering the environmental impact of their operations. But of course, show me the money. Carbon credits are traded. So carbon credits actually, you enter a market essentially where you can sell carbon credits. And so Biofilter, Royal Dairy, and third-party validation firms have gone through this whole process to validate, confirm essentially that these 35,000 carbon credits are true, are occurring, are happening. And now we are going to be able to sell these carbon credits every single year on a market. The price, this is the graph kind of that shows the weighted international, it's called the International Carbon Index. The lowest point it ever was $5 per carbon credit. Lately, as of yesterday, it was up to $26 per carbon credit. So you can basically, carbon credit trading in a nutshell, you can trade it on the spot market, or you can trade it on a compliance market where you can get a premium value. But who are the buyers? Corporations who also want to become carbon neutral, who want to reduce their carbon footprint. They can, one, actually do initiatives such as these, or they can also purchase what is called a carbon offset. So they buy carbon credits generated from projects like these, and they can now say that we offset our footprint by the purchase of. What that also means is that it enables, one, us to have an alternative revenue stream, and then to grow as a company. So of course, people are going to ask, what's the catch? Where are the nutrients actually going? It goes into worm poop. So as the worms are eating, they're obviously pooping, they're converting it into worm castings, which is a microbial rich soil amendment. It's super beneficial. It's another revenue stream because as we harvest it from the system, we can sell it to the cannabis industry, to gardeners, to golf courses. You can mix it and make a blend it's a very great natural product. It's a stabilized nitrogen source. And you can assume that a Holstein will generate about 5 cubic yards of worm poop per year, and a Jersey will generate about 4 cubic yards per year. How do we harvest it? Worms are clean creatures. So the picture on the left, this is a long arm excavator. All the worms throughout the year, they're pushing their poop up to the system surface. And then once at a dairy, once every about 18 months, so a year and a half, we just have to come in and remove the top surface, which at this point, again, has been converted into worm poop. So we'll scrape out the worm poop from the top. We can put it through a trommel screen right here, which is what this front end loader is doing. There we separate the worm poop from the wood shavings that is in the system, and we just toss the wood shavings back, and then we now have worm poop on the side. So to give you an idea of scale, and perhaps if you're wondering what this was earlier, that's all the worm poop from the system that was harvested after a year and a half, almost 2 years of operation. So from this farm, we can sell it, the farmer could use it. But again, we've not only now treated wastewater, we've also generated carbon credits, which is an alternative revenue stream. And we've also generated worm poop, another revenue stream, but also 2 sustainable byproducts that people actually seek and purchase. And so high level, people are probably wondering, wow, Royal Dairy is ginormous. Like I said beforehand, the size of our system depends on how many cows you have, what breed it is, how you operate your wastewater system, do you have solid separation, all those fun things. But high level is you can assume about 57.5 square feet of worm bed per cow to actually install our system. So that's it. I just wanted to give a little talk and kind of close with these clips that what we did is our CEO and dairy, Matthias, and the dairy farm owner, Austin Allred, they thought there was no better way than to show their support and belief in our technology than actually water skiing in the lagoon of our treated wastewater. So as we like to say, join us in using worms to generate clean water, healthy soil, carbon credits, and even new opportunity for water sports in the dairy world. So thank you for listening. And we have a booth, like I said, be sure to visit us at booth 6230. We'll be live chatting, my colleague Mark, who is also on this chat, and I will be there all day today, tomorrow, and Thursday.
Mayanne, thank you very much. Again, everyone, my name is Jeff Macon from Fresno State Wet Center. Appreciate this session by Mayanne Healy of Biofiltro. Mayanne, question on your CEO, Matthias, and the other CEO.
He's still alive. I think he should be in this talk. He's still alive. That was done back in October. Sorry, I'm assuming that was your question.
Yeah. Now, Mark, your colleague Mark Dodd addressed some of the questions in the chat, but it's 9:52. We have 3 minutes till we'll end this session, but would you or Mark like to address any more of those questions? And Grace, if you could help me look and see if anybody raises their hand on Zoom to ask Mayan a question, please help me coordinate with that. But Mayan, would you or Mark like to address any of those questions in the chat or follow up on any points and rounding up your session here?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly read some. We do multiple applications. So Royal Dairy, we're at World Ag, we're going to be talking dairy today. So we do dairy livestock operations. We do a lot of wineries. We do food processors. We do wastewater for rural communities. We have, federal contracts for the Department of Homeland Security. So human wastewater, anything organic. So long as it's not oil and gas or pharmaceuticals, we can handle it. And we have more than 180 installations worldwide. People always ask, can you handle the cold? Can you handle the hot? We're an international company. We have a system on Antarctica handling the rural sanitary domestic waste, definitely rural, domestic wastewater from the research and Air Force base down in Antarctica. And we're also in the Atacama Desert, which is the driest desert in the world. Someone's asking about costs, of course, we have calculated for sure the cost of installing the system, of operating the system, and then of course the additional revenues. So the idea is that the revenues that you can get from carbon credits, from worm castings, potentially now water credits, can you, at what point does it break even with the operational cost? And at what point do you actually begin to make money? So all those costs we have available. Be sure to visit our booth and we can give you a much more detailed information because it obviously depends on size.
Yes, well, Mayan, thank you very much for this wonderful session today on Biofiltro. It is 9:54 Pacific and this session will end here. I will stay on for a little bit and I will stop the recording. But thank you all, and please visit worldagexpo.com to see their lineup of all their sessions today, tomorrow, and Thursday. All the sessions will be provided, will be shared, recorded, such as this one, and available all year. So if you or anyone you know might be interested in any of these sessions, I would suggest they visit worldagexpo.com. And then a comment here from Matthias. Mayan, last chance to maybe address Matthias's chat there. Biofiltro system running in a digester there.
Yes. So someone asked, are we able to operate behind digesters? The answer is yes. So actually, if we operate behind a digester, not only can you get the renewable energy, the gas from the digester, but you also actually get the nutrient removal. And we are also able, the benefit of installing us after a digester is we are actually able to be a lot smaller. So again, the size of our system depends on the water quality coming in. And so since water is, improved slightly, a solid count is improved slightly after a digester, we're able to, depending on the situation, but almost cut our system in half in terms of size. So we can have a beneficial relationship with digesters. And like Matthias said, every dairy should have a biofiltro. Wiggle with us towards neutrality. I should go home.
Go to your booth and see if you have some.
Yeah, I'm at my booth. So Mark and I will be at our booth, 6230. And of course, my email was available. Thank you, Jeff and the Wet Center, for hosting us. And I hope everyone enjoyed the talk.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mayan. Great.
Thank you. I did as well. And I also would recommend everybody go to Biofiltro's Instagram. You can see the full video of them jumping
Yes.
in a clean pond. It's a great video. I would recommend everyone go.
Yes, it's also on our booth too. So you can see it. Matthias is in the chat. He's been texting in the chat. He's still alive. Austin is still alive. Everyone lived the manure pond challenge. Thanks, Grace.
All right, thank you. I'll stay on for a little bit and in the recording. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.